I'm Chris Turner, and this is the Empowered Parent Podcast. Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Empowered Parent Podcast. Joining me, as always, are Ryan and Kayla North. Hi, guys.
Hey, Chris.
Christopher.
We have a guest with us this evening, Lisa Qualls, the author of the new book coming out, next week as we're recording, The Connected Parent, which she co-wrote with the late Dr. Karyn Purvis. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hey, Lisa. We're so glad you're with us.
No, I'm glad to be here. It's wonderful.
So Lisa is the mom of 12 kids by both birth and adoption, and sometimes more through foster care. And she uses her training as a TBRI practitioner and as a certified Enneagram coach to mentor and coach adoptive and foster moms in her membership community, the Hope Circle. And that's so they can renew their hope, gain courage, and become the moms they're meant to be. She's also a speaker and the co-host of her own podcast, The Adoption Connection. Yeah. Did we miss anything?
I think you got it. I think you got it.
Oh, that's so
You're
awesome.
busy, in other words. That's what I get out of reading that is
Yes.
Lisa's busy.
I am busy.
Yes. Okay, so tell us what's the age range of your kids right now? Because your kids are mostly older now.
Yeah. I have a 20-year span. So my oldest daughter's 33 and my youngest son is 13.
Okay, so you still got teenagers in the house.
I have next year I'll have an 8th grader and a 9th grader at home. And then we had a daughter who just graduated from high school a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
So so it's
I
really,
saw that. Oh.
yeah. COVID graduation.
COVID graduations were a little different this year.
Yes.
It was a little strange.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of COVID graduations, the Texas Rangers just built a brand new stadium here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Yes, they did.
And because the Major League Baseball season got delayed opening, they've got this nice, shiny new facility and nothing to do with it. So they got the brilliant idea they would partner with local school districts to hold graduation ceremonies there because it's really easy to social distance. Yes.
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine who Ryan knows texted me a funny little photo from a few days ago that somebody had captioned. They don't know it yet, but the Rangers have built the grandest graduation ceremony venue in the country.
I bet.
Well, I mean, you kind of got to feel a little bit bad for the Rangers because they've had a new ballpark built, and I think, threw in an extra $200 million for a retractable roof so that they could shut it. Because I mean, go to a baseball game, it gets 110 down here in August, right?
Yeah.
And so they wanted to. Well, one of the things that Major League Baseball is requiring teams to play this year is that they cannot shut the stadium roof. and so they dropped an extra, $200 million or whatever for the feature that was supposed to make it super fancy, and they can't even use it.
Yeah. This is a very strange time for sure.
Kind
of a sad time to launch a book too, I have to admit. A lot of things we hoped would happen can't happen.
Well, Lisa, I got to be honest with you, and I don't like to do this, but that's why I'm sitting 6 feet from Kayla because she can't kick me under the table.
I'm going to throw something at him, I guess.
No, because I was going to say I think because my perspective is not the perspective of the author. My perspective is the perspective of the consumer, right? And also, Kayla and I have created training and video-based training and live training and stuff like that. And what I think is even in the midst of everything bad that's happening, and it's been really bad. Right? I mean, people dying, millions of people losing their jobs, a lot of bad things that happen. But I think that a book like this probably is more needed today than it was July 7th, 2019. Yeah. Because we're all more stressed. Things are way more difficult at home, and providing a resource that is readable. It's not a clinical book. It's a book that moms and dads can consume and apply. I think, and again, I don't have any of your anxiety because I didn't write the book. But
you don't care if there's a launch party. Is that what you're telling me, Ryan?
No, what I'm saying is that it's a really, really needed resource. And I think that for such a time as this, it's perfect.
I do think that's true. And I think it is very readable. It's not excessively long. There's story woven throughout. And I have been hearing from people that they're just devouring it and really loving it. So of course that makes me super happy.
Yeah, it's a really easy read. And that's what that's initially so I went to go pick up a to-go order for dinner one night. I guess I stopped on the way and I had to go inside the restaurant and they were kind of slow, and I went inside and I just grabbed it because I had it with me, and I just went inside and I just, read a chapter literally while I was sitting there waiting for a to-go order. And I just had my pen and I'm underlining things and stuff. And it was just really, it was very readable, because I know there's been some books that I loved and I ended up loving that I had to, it took me a little bit to get into them. Like I knew I needed to read it, but it took me a little bit, but I didn't find that with this one. I wanted to hear more of your stories, and I wanted to hear more of just the, just kind of the back and forth between you and Dr. Purvis, and just kind of, she would reference back to some of your stories and, you would tell stories of your kids. And I love, I just loved hearing some of those, it just was, it was very readable. So.
Well, I'll tell you, the idea for the book really came to me because when we were struggling so much, I mean, we were really in a hard place, struggling with bringing home 3 kids at once and then one more a year later. And I just remember literally kneeling in front of my bookcase and pulling. I had already, I had a lot of books and I'd read them, and I remember pulling them off the shelf and thinking, where can I find help? Where can I find what I need right now? And I also remember thinking as I was reading, these people aren't living my life. They're asking me to do things I don't think I possibly can. I mean, they're wonderful. I'm so thankful for all the experts.
Right.
We've all gained so much, but they're not living what we're living as parents. And I just thought, what if we could put those together and give parents a book that's filled with compassion and understanding for them, in addition to all the knowledge and skills. I wanted to give people very simple
practical
tools.
stuff.
Yeah, very practical. And I wanted to be pretty honest in the book too. You'll see the further you get into it, Kayla, but I wrote this book because it was what I needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking back, I mean, I remember one particularly challenging kiddo that we had, and she wasn't with us for very long, just a couple of weeks. And I just remember sitting on the couch and she was kind of raging in the background and destroying things. And I am like pulling kind of that same, when you said you're sitting, pulling stuff off the bookshelf, I was like, there's something here. I know I've learned something that I'm supposed to use in this moment, but I don't know what it is right now. And I didn't have quite the right thing that I could just go, okay, I can read this one little chapter and it's going to give me some tools and it's going to help me in this moment, because it's those moments where you're just like, I don't remember anything I've learned.
Right. Because our prefrontal cortex is offline.
It's totally disengaged at that point. We're fighting
to stay regulated, but we don't have the capacity to do a whole lot of complex thinking when we're under that kind of stress.
Well,
for real.
Before we get into, because look, we didn't warn you, but if you really want a rabbit trail, let's start talking about the brain. Okay. It is our absolute favorite subject to talk about.
And I think our listeners too, because it's one of our most downloaded. When we talk about the brain, those are our most downloaded episodes.
Okay.
And understanding that and how will parenting this way prepare my children for the real world.
Yes.
But what I wanted to talk about just a little bit here, and Chris, I hope you don't mind me jumping in with this question, and if you were about to ask it, I apologize. But what's really intriguing to me about this, we got to know Karyn a little bit, mostly at near the end of her life, with our involvement with Tapestry and with Empower to Connect. And I remember the last time I spoke to her, she, I'm 6'5". I think she was maybe 5 foot even in heels. I don't remember. People who are a lot shorter than me, I can't really tell, but she was a lot shorter than me. And the last time we spoke, I hugged her and said goodbye. And she kissed me on the cheek and she said, "You're precious." And then just put her hand on my face and walked out of the room. And so to me, that's one of the most, like, that's a really endearing memory for me, because I think at that time, there was probably some sense that she wasn't going to win the battle that time. I won't get into details of that, but certainly I think there was a sense that she probably wasn't going to win anymore. I mean, I think that the day that she discovered she wasn't going to beat cancer was probably when she was standing in front of the Lord and just like, oh, she was feisty to the end, but one of the things, and we talked about this briefly before we went live, Lisa, I think one of the things that's really fascinating to me and beautiful about this book is that she was, she had the 4th anniversary of her death was in April of this year. And now this book's coming out next week, and it's and for all of us, except for people like you who are involved in this project, because this project did start before her passing, and so we'd like for you to talk a little bit about the genesis of the project, because I think it's very interesting. But in a lot of ways, with this book coming out on Tuesday, it's kind of like you're bringing Karyn's voice from beyond the grave, and I don't mean that to sound weird, because we really thought we weren't going to hear from her again. And now we have with your help.
Yeah. It's kind of like discovering a letter, that you didn't know you had.
Didn't know it was there. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't read these before. And yeah.
It's really special. And you can imagine the incredible both honor and responsibility I felt with this book. But would you like me to go back and tell you a little bit about how it came to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much.
Okay. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I had been thinking, well, let me go back a little bit further, but I'll be careful not to spend too much time. But when we brought our children home, so we brought home 3 children in the spring of 2007 and returned to Ethiopia. They were all from Ethiopia. We returned a year later and brought home 1 more daughter. And they were joining our family. We already had 7 kids. Of course, some of them were grown, but we had a lot of kids at home still. And, I think we were feeling prepared and somewhat confident because we'd been parents for 20 years. And I had a background in mental health and we'd done tons and tons of training. But wow, there are some things that I think you just can't really be fully prepared for. The changes that can come when you bring children who've been very traumatized into your family. And so our life very quickly and dramatically changed. And our family was struggling. There was a lot of sadness, a lot of fear. And in the midst of those struggles, one of my blog readers, I had started blogging at onethankfulmom.com in 2006. And I didn't even know what a blog was. One of my teenagers got it started for me. And he said, "Mom, you got to stop sending these group emails. Let's just do a blog." So he got it going. And, but one of my blog readers was the one who told me about the connected child and about Karyn. And I remember she sent me a link to some videos from an early tapestry conference. And I remember hearing later that they didn't know if anybody would ever really even see these, but I'm telling you, there were 3 videos. And when I watched her speak, I was so moved and so encouraged. And I just thought, she has hope. She has hope for my children and for my family. And I wanted to learn everything. And so I read The Connected Child. I was blogging about it. And right around that time, Russ and I celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. I think we might have gone away a little early, but anyhow, it was right around in that time. And we went away and I told Russ, I said, "There's only one thing I need you to do. I need you to watch these 3 videos by Karyn Purvis with me." And that was
Happy
not
anniversary,
exactly,
I was going to say, romantic anniversary getaway.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, I can still remember we went to this beautiful mountain house in Montana. I can remember sitting on this sofa watching these videos and just crying, both of us, okay, she has hope and we're going to hold on to her hope because we were out of hope at that point. We were so worn and scared. And so through me starting to write about Karyn and her work and the connected child and learning everything, I ended up meeting her and Michael and Amy Monroe at a conference and started writing for Empowered to Connect, and then later spoke with them. So that was sort of how I came into it. And then Russ and I both went and got TBRI training and became practitioners in 2011. So quite a long time ago now.
Yeah.
But this idea for the book was growing in me. And I approached Karyn at breakfast one morning at a hotel. And I was so nervous, because she's so amazing, And I just told her I had this idea. And I said, well, what do you think? And she said, I think it's a great idea. And I said, so do you want to do it? And she said, I think so. And so anyhow, that's how it got started. And her assistant at that time was Emily Pickett, and you'll see her name on the cover of this book too. And Emily was really the person who kept us organized. So all the drafts and chapters and things were going back and forth. And
yeah, because this is from Texas to Idaho. I mean, it's not like you could go sit and have coffee and discuss.
We had to talk on the phone and send a lot of emails back and forth. And so we started writing in 2012. And it probably took me at least a year to write the book proposal. I had a whole lot to learn, which is another whole topic about publishing books.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, we just continued to work. But through those years, she was diagnosed with cancer. And so we stopped working on her parts for a time, but I continued working. And then we were really in some really hard places with parenting. And so there were times when I couldn't write and she could write. And then, people who followed me for a while know that at the end of 2014, we were in a car accident, Russ and I and our daughter, Calcadon, and we lost our daughter. And at that point, I remember thinking, I don't know if that we'll ever finish this. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to write again. I felt so emotionally and physically broken,
Yeah.
And somewhere in there, and I can't quite remember at the moment, Karyn's cancer returned. So I think that must have been after we started writing again, because I remember reaching out to her and saying, okay, I need to finish this for my daughter. I need to finish this in honor of her, because she is the reason that we learned all of this. She's the reason that we found Karyn, and we devoted ourselves into learning connected parenting. And so she said, okay, let's do it. And then of course her cancer came back. And so, but we had the book in a really good, strong space before she passed away. And after we'd waited a little while, I spoke with her family and I said, how do you feel about this book being finished? And they wanted it done. Her three sons, they knew that she wanted it done and they wanted it finished. It was her last written work. So they were very much behind the book being completed. And Emily stepped in just brilliantly and took the parts that were still like drafts, and she just put it all together using all Karyn's words, videos and interviews that hadn't ever been aired and things to just put it all together. And she did an amazing job. I'm so thankful. So thankful to her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because, we know that Karyn, till the very end, was working hard for kids. She wanted to make sure. I've heard stories of just her, when she wasn't feeling well, getting dressed and going to fundraisers because she knew that her speaking there would make a difference, and so I know that this book was important to her because she worked on it for many years.
We did.
You guys are sounding really sentimental now, which is really going to be bad when I say the thing that I wanted to say, because the whole time you were telling that really moving story, Lisa.
Yes.
I kind of got stuck on the anniversary trip where you made Russ watch the videos. And I wanted to say that this is a little known fact, but Russ Qualls and I once spent a lovely weekend together at a mountain resort in Colorado.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
There were like 98 other people there. It wasn't just me and Russ.
Did you make him watch Dr. Purvis videos?
I just held him when he cried about that time his wife. No, it was fun. It was funny though, because we were at the men's retreat in Colorado Springs, and it was a really difficult time for me. I just tried to avoid people the whole time. I was really struggling emotionally But Dan Coley was there and Andrew Schneidler, and they kind of dragged me out of my emotional malaise back to reality. But on the last full day there, they have this breakfast. You got to kind of hike up the side of the mountain, and they make like pancakes the size of car tires over there for this, the cowboy breakfast or whatever. And so that's where Dan introduced me to Russ. So we did get to talk a little bit, mostly about our wives. But I think that's, I don't know if...
That's good.
We're worth
like
talking
wherever
about.
I go, like I always like people like, do we have to talk about Kayla again?
I think one of my memories of that is that I think it was Calcadon's birthday while you guys were there. And her favorite color was orange, and a lot of people wore orange.
For her.
I do remember that now. Yes,
actually.
Yeah.
Yes, I do remember that now. Yes.
And they sent me pictures, a bunch of guys dressed in orange, and it was really special. Yeah.
That is very sweet.
I love our community. We adopted parents. We got to stick together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was really upset about something. And we had actually had Tapestry conference and brought somebody in from Atlanta to speak, and for about 90% of the people, this person went over really, really well. And if I said her name, Lisa, I'll tell you afterwards. You probably know her.
Okay.
But it was somewhat controversial for a handful of folks, and so what we try to do after big events is just kind of do nothing the night of the last day and then do nothing the next day. But we were at Tyler's soccer game and during warm-ups, and so I, of course, because like most of us, I'm an email addict, opened my email, and there was like the 7-paragraph email where I was accused of a whole bunch of really ugly things.
Oh, no.
And I was really simmering about it. And then I think the next weekend is when we did the retreat, and I was talking to Andrew Schneidler over there, and I said, man, I really want to respond. And he said, no good will come of it. In Andrew's defense, he's a lawyer, so he considers words very, very carefully. And he said, I'll tell you what, you type your response, send it to me, I'll delete it, and you can feel good about it, but you're not sending that to anybody.
That's so great.
Like,
he gave me some good advice once. He told me, Lisa, you'll catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. So, he's a wise guy.
There you go.
Oh my gosh! Now we have to have Schneidler on.
You probably should.
Yeah, let's have Michelle on though.
Yeah, there we go. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail us there.
Totally.
I did forget about the orange on that Sunday morning.
Yeah, we still do that. That's very special.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Birthday. So it's her birthday. Is that her birthday in September, October?
It's in October. Late
Okay,
October.
I knew it was fall sometime.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think it was like the week after Tapestry conference that year that we went up there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, well, back to the book.
Okay, back to the book. Yes.
Chris, you got any questions?
I do have one question because I know this is a question that's probably floating around in some people's minds. I've read The Connected Child, and I've read, The Whole Brain Child, and whatever other many, books we have available to us about connection and understanding our kids, all that kind of stuff. What makes this different than all those? And why should I buy this book if I haven't have read all these other books?
Well,
someone's out there thinking that right now. So.
Absolutely, I've actually gotten that question a lot, so I'm glad you asked. Well, first of all, the obvious thing is you've got two voices in this book. You've got this amazing developmental research psychologist, and you've got a mom who, yes, I had a lot of background and stuff, but like I was struggling and learning and experimenting and just doing my very, very best. So you've got two voices. Secondly, I think, The Connected Child was written, I keep meaning to check this. It's either like 2006 or 2008. I can't remember quite what. You can look. So TBRI and trust-based relational intervention has really developed and grown and changed some since then. So it's more updated from that. I think
2007.
Okay, 2007.
Okay.
I should remember that. That's the year my kids came home. I think one of the things that is a really nice change is the way we presented attachment. It's not a change, it's just different. We have a whole chapter just devoted to understanding attachment. And then the next chapter is on understanding ourselves and our attachment styles. And, it's only one chapter. We could write books and books about that. But I think it's helpful. And it's also very compassionate. I think sometimes the message we get as adoptive parents is, well, it's your attachment style that's the problem. Well, that is not what we need to hear. We need to hear, hey, let's be curious about ourselves and see how we can understand ourselves and our history and how that is contributing to how we parent our kids. So there's that. There's a whole chapter on teens, which is really needed. And then the last chapter is on really caring for yourself and what that means. And we go far beyond typical self-care. I think
So you don't tell everybody to take a bubble bath?
No.
Go for a walk.
There's not 20% off a pedicure coupon.
No, it's a little different from that. But
a little deeper than that.
I really just want to encourage parents that it's incredibly hard what we're doing. And it takes a lot, and we cannot do it alone. We talk about community. We talk about so many things. And I just think that's very important part of the book. So those are probably the main differences, I think. And we also end, the way the book is structured, I love. And so the first part is on attachment, but then the whole middle section is on all the different skills and tools. And I tried to make the chapter so clear so that it's really easy to find what you're looking for. So I made the chapter titles things like Simplify with Scripts, Combat Chronic Fear, Teach Respect, so that a parent can find a chapter really quickly. And then at the end of every chapter, we have key takeaways. So if you're like, what was that thing about scripts? You can just look at the last page and get it.
That was what I liked when I was looking through it too, was that it had that key takeaway. So if you have read The Connected Child and you're like, I really need a refresher on XYZ and I want a mom's perspective on this as well, then you could pick it up and go to that chapter.
Yes.
If that's what you have time for in that minute, you could pick up that chapter and you already know what's going to be in it.
Right.
But I also like the different learning points, try it today with your child. Yes. And it was try this with your child, because that's what I think is important. As we talk to parents, we can give them all the information and they're like, and where do I start? There's so much information. Where do I start? And you're like, here's one little snippet. Here's one little thing. You can try this. And this is going to be, this will be what you can do today. And I'm like, I feel like if I read a chapter, if I were to pick up the book and say, I'm going to read a chapter a day and I'm just going to do what that says, or a chapter a week and I'm just going to do that little snippet, it would be a really bite-sized, manageable way to say, I can do this. So that's what I liked about it. I love the format too.
So I wrote down a couple of notes while you were speaking, Lisa. One of them is, I'm so glad that you're talking about, because let me, before I finish that sentence, because what I think happens a lot is, and I know we did this for a long time and then obviously, learned better and have tried to do better. But what happens is we bring our kids home and then what seems like it's a really great idea is that we become really, really focused on the child's healing. And we no longer focus on the healing that we have to do.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, that conversation I mentioned earlier, the last time I spoke to Karyn, I said, I want you to know something. And that is that your work and our involvement with it and our involvement with the ETC, it has done three things for me. And it's done these three things in this order. Number one, it helped me understand my dad better. Which in turn gave me a lot of grace for him as a man in his 60s, because I understood the impacts of his childhood and also understood that nobody really helped him with the impacts of his childhood, right? And number two, it helped me understand myself more because I am the son of that man. And the third thing it did for me was it helped me be a better parent.
Yes.
And to me that was the value of all of it, because now there's generational healing. I get along better with my dad today than I did in the previous 44 years of my life. Kayla gets along better with her mom today than she did when we first met, and that's because It's because we've understood that the healing journey is parallel, right? Sorry for the awkward pronunciation there. But it's not just my kids who have to heal. It's me who has to heal. I think, and I don't remember, it was either Karyn or Henry Nouwen talking to Karyn. I don't know. One of the two.
One of those wise people.
One of the two of them said this: you cannot show a child the path to healing if you don't know the way yourself. Because of the child, Karyn said that, not Henry now, and he would have said a person because he worked with adults.
Yes.
Right? And we're firm believers in that. So, over the years, Kayla and I have developed some stuff here. This year we launched our first, some video resources, but now we've launched our first live class. We actually teach with Zoom. We're running our second session right now. And the first thing that we have people do before week one, so there's homework leading into week one, and one of the homework items is to take the ACEs questionnaire, right? And because we need you thinking about your childhood and its impacts if we're actually going to make the progress here that you say you want to make. And that's big medicine for people sometimes. A lot of times people don't want to do that. And so just super thrilled to hear that you're addressing that in the book too. And it's not just, and now as I say that, now the title makes sense to me. Right? I mean, I heard you say it, but when it came out of my mouth, I'm like, oh, the connected parent, yes.
Yes.
Like, sometimes I'm just a little slow on the uptake. I apologize.
Well, I think not only when we begin to understand about trauma and attachment and chronic fear and building trust and all those things. First of all, I wish I'd parented all my children this way. Yeah. My older crew, we parented as very traditionally and, the way we were taught in the church. And, they did fine, but I wish that I had parented all of them that way. But the truth is, even when you have young adults, you're still parenting. So I get to use this with all of my kids. And not only that, but don't you feel like it changes how you see all people?
It does.
Every person now.
Well, because you look at behaviors of people and you go, what's behind it? Like, why are they behaving in that way? I mean, even the grocery checker, you're thinking, man, I wonder what's going on. I wonder why they're so short with people today, or why they're so, I do. I feel like everywhere I go, it makes me more compassionate for people.
Yes.
And maybe even more so, I guess, now that, our oldest has a job. And so I think and he works in fast food. And so whenever whenever we go get fast food, I think, how would I want people to treat my kid, knowing, how he might respond, or, things he's gone through. And I think that's everybody's story. Everybody's got a story somewhere behind there. And so, it is definitely made the way I interact with people on a regular basis different.
Yes.
As someone who worked in fast food as a teenager and then continued in the food industry into college, I think it's something that, I'm loath to invoke the government to make people do something, but I think there'd be a lot more empathy if everyone had to go work in the fast food industry for at least a year.
I did. I did my part.
You did your part. Yeah, that's funny.
Do you agree with Chris's statement that it is empathy in empathy cultivating?
Well, I also worked in a group home for children, so which is why I thought I was so prepared, right?
So my son
it's different
comes
when
home.
They come to your house, though. I mean, that's what makes the difference.
Yes.
We have 6 kids living under this roof. I mean, like if we had a 7th kid, Texas would be like, that's a group home.
Yeah. For sure.
Right. Right.
Well, I will tell you this. And my son knows that I tell this story. I've told it in front of him, and so it's not a secret. But when he came home at almost 3 years and 9 months, we were told that he would struggle always, and I think the quote was, would never have the cognitive ability to ever live on his own. And I will tell you that, and that's right, that was the genesis of our involvement with all of this, because up until that point, we were just sort of managing schedules with babies. But now we had a 4-year-old who had memories and feelings and experiences, and would connect and think people had no idea who they were. And that's when we started looking for help. And that was right at the time that that Empower to Connect was created, and so we went through that, and I think we piloted the first course they had, and so the genesis of all that. And I will tell you that boy, he's 17 now, and I think about this every day, and there are many stories, but he came home last week with not a red shirt from the fast food chicken place he works at, Chick-fil-A, but the blue and white, the one with the fine blue and white hoops around it, because that's his managerial shirt, and they put him in the manager track. He runs services at the thing there, and then he explains to us about working in fast food. And I'm like, I'm a reasonably intelligent person, but I would get fired from Chick-fil-A like night one. There's just so many moving parts.
Yeah.
And so when people say to me, do you believe that this stuff actually works? We get that question so much that one time we were speaking and that at Q&A at the end, and somebody said, do you believe, I mean, we've listened to you for 3 hours. Do you believe it works? And I said, no, I don't. And there was like a in the room. And I said, I don't have to believe it works because I know it does. The evidence lives underneath my room, right? I mean, all of the diagnoses and predictions for my children were very, very much more bleak than the reality in which we live in today. And that's because we, a long time ago, it's funny, it never used to be a long time ago, but it's more than 10 years now, so it feels like a long time ago, really made the decision that we were all in on this and we were going to do this. And now, after a decade plus of doing that, we actually see that the things that Karyn first talks about all those years ago, because like you know, the Monroes asked us to read The Connected Child, and I'm like, that just sounds real sort of hug it out to me. And I think that's a lot of dads' responses initially. But then we went to the first Tapestry conference, and she spoke, and I remember, I don't remember much of what she said, but I will remember this last one. It's the one where her hair was really long and she had a cane for some reason. I don't know if that's the one of the videos you guys watched.
Is it? But I would love to guess. Is it the one where she talked about, what do you have in your hand? I don't remember. Okay.
But what I do remember is some version of this, and I'm probably butchering the quote because, as I've learned, memories are not Polaroids. They're stories you tell your brain tells you. But this is my memory of the event. She said, there's nothing special about what we do. We just remember the way our grandmothers treated us, and we're trying to do it like that.
There's something similar to that in the book, actually. Yeah. I was reading it, and I was like, this is the story Ryan tells a lot about remembering that.
She hooked me with that because I thought about my grandmother, who was the sweetest, kindest person I have ever known. We talk so much about her in the family that when Kayla and I went to South Africa about 10, 12 years ago now, we went and put flowers on my grandmother's grave, and I hear Kayla crying next to me. And I looked at her, and because I was just married 2 years, I didn't know how to be a husband. I was just basically a moron with a wife. Okay. Instead of being kind to her, I said, "Why are you crying? You didn't know her." I know. Yeah. Everybody's judging me right now. But the truth of the matter is, Kayla looked at me, and she kind of gathered herself, and she said, "Yeah, I know, but you guys always speak so highly about her that standing here by her grave, I'm just sad that I never knew her." And I think
cry on Facebook Live. That's not very nice.
and I think that's the legacy that you're keeping alive is that there are people who read Karyn's work and are sad because they wish they got a chance to know her.
Yes.
So in that regard, I suppose the only words I have is that we're grateful for this book, Lisa. We hope that this is the jumping off point, the starting point of many more books for you.
Thank you.
And for sharing your wisdom with the world. Now, I did text you. I don't know if your phone's proximate or not, Lisa.
It's not. I gave it to my daughter in case my boys texted while I was doing this.
Well, I mean, I could ask you the question live on Facebook if you want me to.
Whatever it is, go for it. Look at my light thing is doing something weird on my.
How do you feel about us saying, "Hey, folks, why don't you post some questions in the comments, and we'll lob some Q&A live at Lisa." What do you think about that?
Game.
Okay.
I mean, if I don't know the answer, I will tell you I don't know the answer.
There you go.
Perfect. All right. You want me to
Well,
go?
hold on. And then you must also say, but Kayla will find it for you.
Oh, yes. Yes.
If I don't know the answer, Kayla will.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what Ryan does in Q&A. We'll do Q&A places and he'll be like, I'm not sure. Honey, why don't you take this one? And
Yeah.
I'm like, hey now.
She is so good.
So
She's
funny.
so good under pressure.
Oh my goodness.
I'm just honing her skills. That's all
So
I'm doing.
I'm looking
So
at
good
the
of you.
comments just to see if we may,
I haven't seen any questions really so far.
Okay.
I figured
can't,
that
for
while
some reason I can't see them all. So
I know,
don't
but
why.
while we give them a chance to maybe throw a question in there.
Yep.
I understand, Lisa, there's an audio book version.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, in case I forget to say this, it's coming out August 1st, is what I have heard from the audiobook company. And okay, I'm sorry for the people watching Facebook Live. This white balance thing on my computer is making my face yellow. But anyhow, I keep trying to move to try to make it change, but whatever. I hope they cut that out of the podcast. So the audiobook, yes. When I first learned that there would be an audiobook, I asked, is there any chance I could read it? And I was told, no, we really don't do that unless the author's famous, but otherwise we don't do that. And then...
Which is funny because a lot of famous authors don't read their books.
Yeah, well, right.
Like all the big names that you typically think of when you think of bestsellers, none of those authors read their own books.
Well, I really wanted to, but I understood it wasn't really a possibility. And then they came back to me and they said, actually, we do want you to read it. And I didn't know if it would happen because of COVID. We had to postpone a couple times, but I went to San Diego, Russ and I went, and I got to record the book. And, first of all, I'm so thankful I could tell my family stories myself. Really was a blessing to me. But it was really sweet. The director of my book, I mean, it's kind of hard to picture, but I'm in this glassed in thing with my headset and everything with the book manuscript in front of me. And she's outside and she's the director. And every time I take a breath, she marks it on this computer screen because I have to take out every breath and all this stuff. And every time I made a mistake and had to say a word again, try to say vulnerable too many times. It's tricky. But she was an adoptive mom. And so we just had this incredible connection. So I was almost like reading the book to her, and it was beautiful. And there were a few times that I got pretty choked up and we had to pause. I just couldn't talk, either talking about my daughter Calcudon or just talking about, that this is hard work and I know how hard people are working. And so it was a beautiful experience. I'm so thankful I got to do it. Yeah.
That's so fun.
So I'm very excited for that to come out.
Well, Lisa, here's a question. Two questions from Veronica. Oh, we know Veronica. And so Veronica has two questions. I'll ask you both, and I know the answer to one, but I'd love for you to share the good news on that one. So her first question is, wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the teen section. And then the second question, which is going to be the super easy one to answer, is, will there be a workbook?
There is going to be a study guide, and it will, from everything I understand, it's going to be free to people who purchase the book. It can be used by groups. It can be used by individuals. We intentionally, like the Connected Child, we did not make this a faith-based book because we're really hoping it will be used for foster parent training and educators and things all over the world, really, but our country in particular. And so this, I'm hoping, will be used for training, and that study guide will really make it easier for the people facilitating the training to have it already completed. And it is nearly done, I believe. I don't know exactly what date it's going to be available, but it will be available, I believe, on my website, onethankfulmom.com.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Awesome.
So, okay, the teen section. Whoa, I should have reviewed it. You would think I would know every word in this, but let's remember I started writing in 2012. But I'm really thankful in a way that I had the opportunity to read it so carefully, word for word, when we were recording it.
Oh, yeah.
I think the main important things to me about the teen part are, first of all, that connected parenting and trust-based parenting works for teens, but it has to be adapted, to to respect their maturity. You know, we don't want to use childish phrases and scripts with them. We want to acknowledge that they're growing up and use appropriate language. We talk about kids who come to our families older, and that's complicated and different and what they bring. And one of the things that I do talk about is that, you know, we have a goal of secure attachment. But when you bring a teenager into your family or an older child, it's going to look different. It's not going to look the same way it does when you bring a baby into your family. And if you have a child who's struggled with attachment through the years, the teen years, it's just going to be different. And that doesn't mean it's bad. You know, that we have to remember that our kids are doing the best they can and we're doing the best we can. And sometimes that's enough. And I think one of the things I want us to do when we're parenting teens is say, well, even if it doesn't feel exactly the way I hoped it would feel, or even look the way I hoped it would look, I am preparing my child for a better future and a better life as an adult, and to be a better parent themselves, because we're investing in them for that future. Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that stands out to me from the teen portion.
I love that there's a specific portion for teens, because that's something that it's a question that we've gotten for years, you know.
I think, you know, I was thinking while Lisa was answering that. So Lisa, over the years, Kayla has done, her and a couple of other folks have worked with teens, and I mean, there were some tough stories in that group. And so you're right. I mean, the principles apply. Like I've often told people that one day when I can carve out the time to do it, I'm starting a management consulting firm, and it's all to be based on trust-based parenting. Because it's just all about relationships, because people still respond. You just have people say, well, you know, one of the questions we get is, well, I understand how that works with 9-year-olds. How does it work with 2-year-olds, you know, toddlers? How does it work with, and basically if you talk long enough, most people are saying, I accept that it works with other people's kids, but well, how's it going to work with my kids? Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's why we often get like age specific questions. But I will tell you this, that if you, we tell people all the time, creativity is your friend, right? Being rigid is not going to be your friend, because that's right. I mean, you have to creative, and it's not just being creative in the moment, but creatively applying these things to different ages and stages. And I'll never forget one of the teens with a really, really tough story. His dad spoke to me one Sunday night. We were at an event. His dad came up to me and he said, "Hey, I want you to know we're adopting our son on Tuesday." And I said, "Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations." He said, "Yeah, I'm not telling you that because I just want you to know. I'm telling you because we would never have ever gotten there if it wasn't for him being part of that teen group." And it was beautiful. Just all the same principles that are just being applied, because you have to know what works, right? You cannot just, I mean, like hands and eyes to a 17-year-old is not helpful. It's annoying.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, actually, let me share a really short story. And I hadn't thought about this in preparation, so I'll be slightly cautious. But, you know, one of our daughters is 20 and is living on her own, making a lot of her decisions. She's extremely independent and hardworking. And we got a call from her, and she had appendicitis, and she had to have an appendectomy in a totally different state. And trust has been very hard for her, you know, accepting nurture, trusting us, even though she's been in our family since she was about 10. And we ended up with this beautiful opportunity. I felt like God just placed it in our laps to love her and nurture her and care for her. We flew her home the day after her surgery, which I know you probably shouldn't do that, but she needed a place to come and rest and be safe and be cared for. And it was really beautiful and very, very healing. So, you know, at 20 years old, I'm using all my trust-based parenting skills with her, you know.
Absolutely.
To continue building trust, because it's a lifelong thing for our kids who've had a lot of trauma and suffering and did not have parents for many, many years. I think it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Just before you, sorry, Chris, before you say that, I just want to alert everybody, we've officially been at this for 1 hour. So I don't know how long you can stay, Lisa. or not, but we are at the end of what we asked for.
Well, I'm fine. I know it's a lot later for you than it is for me, though.
That's kind of, we don't go to bed till about 1. Like Chris will come over, record the podcast, and leave here at like 1:30 in the morning.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I get up super early.
Yeah, we're more late people than we are early people. So.
Okay.
But I think we had a couple more questions.
Well, Chris was about to say something, and I cut him off.
Okay.
Sorry, Chris.
Before I jump to the next question, one thing that Ryan was saying there about being creative, I think a lot of parents feel like they don't know how to do that necessarily. They feel like I'm not a creative person because they think that creative means artsy, you know?
Yes.
Right? But really creative is adaptable. And the thing that I think, the thing I know I forget about as a parent, so I know I'm not the only one, is we forget to do the detective work on our kids. When they come into our home. It's something that is easy to do when they first come into the home. But like you were just saying, Lisa, it's something you have to continue to do as they remain in your home and as part of your family. Yeah. Because that's how you're going to get that creativity. That's how you're going to adapt. You have to, peel the onion, as we've heard it called before.
By the time our daughter was with us for a week, and when I was driving her, it was about an hour and a half drive to the airport when she left, and we had the most important conversation maybe I've ever had with her.
Wow.
And it was because we'd had a week to lay the foundation for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
So good.
I'm so thankful. I can't even, I'm just like, God, you amaze me. You just totally amaze me that you gave us that opportunity.
Just that little moment out of nowhere in the midst of crazy that we've got going on in our world.
Well, it's like our 17-year-old son. When most nights he works the closing shift, and so what that means is they got to shut it down, they got to clean it, obviously, and so he gets home typically between 11 and midnight, most nights of the week, and then he'll come in there, and so we'll be brain fried by that time. So for the most part, we've shut the laptops and we're maybe just watching an episode or something before we go to bed. Then he'll come in and he'll sit down and he'll just tell us about his day. And some days I'm like, I'm just really tired. Do we have to have every detail of teenage drama? And I don't say that to him. I said that to Kayla, and she gently put her hand in my hand and said, hey, I'm just thankful that my teenage son wants to talk to me about his day.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You're not going to ruin that for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, ma'am.
It's true. It's true. It's a gift.
It is a gift. Absolutely. It's a gift. And we don't want to take that for granted, for sure.
All right. So Brenda wants to know, how do I get my kiddos to do chores?
Oh, boy.
What a great question. Lisa?
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, oops, sorry. There's always a structure. We have to have a very clear system that they understand, of course, but I do a lot of when then. So when this is done, then you can do that, because I want them to know I have complete confidence that they are capable of doing what I'm asking them to do. So it's not if you do this, then you can do that. It's when, because I know you can, and I believe you will. So that's probably one little thing. I would also be very sure that you are not asking for chores that are too many steps if their brains can't quite handle that, and that they need to be done at optimal times. Like, make sure your child has eaten before you do chores, make sure, think about all the body and the brain and all of that, take all that into consideration. We also do some things just as a family, like dinner cleanup. It's just, nobody's done till everybody's done. We just stick it out together. Yeah. But you do have to set the bar low enough for them to get over it, right? I mean, we can't expect them to clean the way we would. Right. So I don't know. Those are just a few little things that come to mind.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. I was just going to say this. Give them simple instructions, and this is why I think that every book that's written about the brain, particularly in a level that those of us who don't have all the letters in front of and after our names can understand. When you start learning about sort of the prefrontal cortex and executive function, and you realize and you learn that initiation is one of the 8 executive functions of the human mind, which means that if that part of the brain, which means it's why children always struggle with that part, right? And then kids with trauma histories and how their brains, have atypical wiring and all of those things, and you're realizing that part of their brain's not being readily accessible. It's not because your kid is lazy, and we sometimes think it's because your child is lazy. The truth of the matter is that they are just, it's like literally not occurring to them because that part of their brains are working, right? And so at our house, it's like, okay, well, I need you to do that. Okay. And then we remind, and then we'll talk through it or whatever, because if we're going to think, because we used to do go to your room, pick up your laundry, make your bed, and pick up your toys.
And brush your teeth while you're at it, right?
Yeah.
And then we get upstairs.
And then lob an extra instruction that you forgot to give him.
Yeah, while he's walking upstairs. And then you get upstairs, he's just sitting on his bed. I'm like, what are you doing? And he said, you told me to go to my room. Well, because the first thing. So with our son who struggles with that, we'll give him your step 1. When you complete step 1, your step 2. And so for us, what we've learned is it requires a greater deal of parental involvement, and it requires more work, which is oftentimes, for us, our experience and families we've worked with, it's the extra mile that you have to do to make connected parenting work.
Yeah.
That oftentimes we don't want to do, and there's a myriad of reasons why we don't want to or we can't even. But like you said, hey, we clean the kitchen together. Mom cleans the kitchen alongside the rest of the gang,
and Dad too.
Yeah. That was one of the things that we had to early on, was like we figured out that you can't look at those. They have all those charts of what should a 6-year-old be able to do and what should a 12-year-old. Those don't work for our kids. I mean, they just, unless you're looking at developmental age, and then it might work for you. But if you're looking at just age, you're going to be severely frustrated if you are trying to get your 12-year-old who's emotionally a 6-year-old to do things that 12-year-olds do, and it's just not going to work. And so setting the bar appropriately for what they can do is going to be the first level of not getting so frustrated, because when we were not doing that, it was so frustrating, because it's like, you should be able to look at my little chart. I printed this nice little chart off Pinterest and it tells me that a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old can do X, Y, and Z, and you're not doing it. So,
well, I just want to remind everybody that this is called the Empowered Parent Podcast, and my children have been appearing just to my left off screen over here. So we're either going to have to tie a bow on this. It is after 11 o'clock. It's Friday on the East Coast already.
Yes,
and I know that there are more questions. But those questions are in there, and if. Lisa, you can jump into the Facebook page and reply, or Kayla and I can reply. Chris can reply. Those are all questions I think we can speak to. But Chris, we either have to tie a bow on this, amigo, or I've got to excuse myself because I'm writing notes on business cards and holding them out here to the kids. At some point we have to parent.
I was going to say, I think if anybody was watching the video very closely, you could see a kid just scooching down behind Ryan on the stairs.
Well, I'm trying to figure out where my kids are, because the whole kitchen's dark. I think when I said, do not interrupt me, they took it to heart. So
there you go.
Although I think I hear somebody out there.
Now they're like, oh, wait, Mom's talking about us. Maybe we can come in.
Maybe we can come in the kitchen now. Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Well, that is too funny. Well, and I think we should remind people that are in the Facebook Live too, don't forget to tag somebody, because we are going to be giving away. So if you joined us late, we're going to give away a copy of the Connected Parent to you and to the person that you tag. We're going to pick somebody. So if you tag somebody, then you and the person you tagged will get a copy if your name's chosen. So don't forget to put that in there. We will cut that off at the end of the night tonight. So.
Okay. Well,
excellent.
We also, all right. Well, enough said. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on with us. It was great to visit with you again.
Yes.
Thank you. It was really special to be with you. I know that you share my love for Karyn and passion for connected parenting. It's really special to get to do this.
Yeah, I'm so glad you could come join us. And I can't wait to get through the rest of the book.
Well, good.
I've really been enjoying it. So
good. Thank you. Well, I hope I get to see you all in person sometime before too long.
Seriously.
Amen, sister.
We need to end up in the same place at the same time.
That's right. One of these days we will end up when we're allowed to go to places with more than like 10 people again.
Yes.
So.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Well, thanks,
All
Lisa.
right.
And for anyone who didn't get a question in on the Facebook live stream, you can always email them to us at info@onebighappyhome.com. We've got our Facebook group just for podcast listeners, but we're restricting that now, are we not?
We are for Patreon subscribers.
And how do they subscribe on Patreon?
So
Kayla, what is the address?
You can go to patreon.com/empoweredparent, and you can find out for as little as like $5, you can help us just keep this going, because it does take a lot to keep a podcast going. And so we have perks. We had a live Q&A in June that was a lot of fun for Patreon subscribers, which is fun. They could just ask us their questions. We talked for like 2 hours. I mean, it was longer than we thought it would be, but it was a lot of fun. And it was good to just get to talk to some listeners. But we also have other things. We put some videos and extra resources. You get discounts for classes and courses that we're offering and different things. So go to patreon.com/empoweredparent to get subscribed, and we'll also be giving away one of the books to a Patreon subscriber. So right now, that list is very short. So what I think we were going to do like until the launch of the book. So if you subscribe by July, we're in
7th.
July now. If you subscribe by July 7th, as a Patreon subscriber, we're going to draw a name from there to get a free copy of the book too. So.
All right. Thanks, Kayla.
Yeah.
You can subscribe to our podcast if you're, watching us on Facebook right now, as opposed to listening to it normally, and you don't normally subscribe to the podcast. You can find us in iTunes, the Google Play Store, and on Spotify. I guess they don't call it iTunes anymore. Apple has split it out. It's now Apple Podcasts.
Podcasts now. Okay.
But just search for the Empowered Parent Podcast, and we should be the first result that pops up for any of those. And if you've enjoyed and gotten value from the show, we would appreciate a review in any of these locations. The Empowered Parent Podcast is committed to helping parents of foster and adopted kids through connecting, correcting, and empowering principles. Thanks for listening.